I'd like to call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. I wonder if we could stand for the pledge, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Black.
Here.
Alderman Fazzini.
Here.
Alderman Fruin.
Here.
Alderman Lauer.
Here.
Alderman Sage.
Here.
Alderman Milwalamwe.
Here.
Alderman Stearns.
Here.
Alderman McDade.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Again, one of the things I might, or just to remind my council members, we are going in the typical laissez-faire way, so you need to turn your mics on, and up to 4 of you can have your mics live at the same time. Just want to remind you of that. Thank you. We're going to start out with the public comment, and we start out with a very familiar face, Alton Franklin. Would you please come forward? And again, I would remind everybody that you have 3 minutes, and there, of course, is no response. The public is basically, it's open mic time for up to 3 minutes. Thank you, Alton.
Alton, excuse me, Alton Franklin. My name is Alton Franklin. I reside at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington. Just 2 real quick things, Mayor. Got my notice from with regards to the municipal aggravation, and I say that advisedly because it's been a little bit less than pleasant. It was kind of interesting to me when I did the figuring because I'd heard figures, and of course they were only projected figures. We really couldn't know, but it was something on the order of 20 to 25%. Well, actually, in electing to opt out, which I will do, I am saving 0.004 of a cent by not doing business with the doing business as arm of Ameren, which is doing the municipal aggravation. So just, word to you folks, you might want to take a look at your bill before you figure all these monies that you're saving out there that you're not really saving. The only other thing I had was in regards to the apartment item that's out there. I was somewhat not really disturbed, but a little bit kind of questioning as regards how the public was dealt, the actual residents who are there. And also, I noticed in the readings that that came with the minutes and the agenda and everything that we have an option that City Council can change the time of that meeting. And given that 5 people actually showed up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a work day, it says to me they had something, I think, pretty strongly vested in that. Now, I've since talked with some other folks that have a more positive view of the project, so I'm kind of ambivalent from the standpoint that I don't live there, but I am concerned given what I saw on paper with the kind of singular egress route, the numbers that they were talking about putting in there, and substituting a 55 by 75 playground for 4 apartments for what could be hundreds of children seems to be a bit conservative, to be kind. But that being said, again, I'm heartened by what I've been seeing. I really enjoyed the time that I had at the mayoral open house, the kind of discussions, the engagement that I saw coming from some of my fellow citizens was inspiring. It really was. For too long, I feel like I've been one of the lone or one of the few voices crying out in the wilderness, and it does seem like folks are starting to realize that there can be something brought about in a positive way with that kind of engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Peggy DeHaven. And again, would you please state your address for the record, please.
Peggy DeHaven, 7 Zavitz Court in Bloomington, part of the McGraw subdivision. Tonight I am asking that the City Council table or deny the special use permit for the apartments on Exton for the following reasons. 1, safety, crime, increased traffic, fire, and emergency response times. For example, McGraw Park subdivision currently only has one entrance to our homes. With increased traffic coming from these apartments and the parking on Exton will further complicate the EMS response time that currently is 6 seconds shy of the national average of 6 minutes. As homeowners and taxpayers, we would like to know that we can be reached in a timely manner should it arise. In response to traffic control, I believe this was the zoning board letter that went to the council members. It was in the packet, and it stated that on paragraph 3 of the background, that the west side parking has been eliminated, which signs have been placed, but law enforcement does not enforce them. We've called numerous times to report illegally parked cars. Many times cops will drive by them and just continue on and not even ticket them. It also states that speed humps have been installed, which is incorrect. According to David Hales, who I spoke with on Friday at the mayor's meeting, they can't install them on Exton because of the increased traffic that's already there now, that it would possibly cause further problems. The also concern of traffic there is the Garrick-Hafley intersection. If we have increased apartments there, certain times of the day, basically going to work and coming home, that intersection is very congested between the two businesses and people leaving the current apartments, people coming off of Empire into the apartments or into our subdivision. That gets very congested right there. And if you're coming off of Garrick, which is Exton continued, that becomes almost next to impossible at certain times of the day. Safety: with increased population in smaller areas comes the increase for crime, gangs, and drugs. Although these currently don't appear to be a problem, but we cannot be sure that in the future these apartments that are currently there, or the additional 88, I guess, as of today, won't eventually become Section 8 housing. Is there any guarantee that as homeowners, our values will not go down because of these apartments possibly in the future can't be fulfilled and then become Section 8 or low-income housing? We also have concern for schools. A new school was built approximately 4 years ago, Benjamin, to provide with overcrowding. After 3 years of being open, it already has 150 students over capacity, which has caused a need for redistricting. After speaking with Dawn at the superintendent, at the superintendent's office, no school district is prepared to handle additional homes, and currently there is talk of a new school being possibly built, but there is no funding at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Dean Gessner. Is Dean here? Again, Dean, if you could also, when you come up, if you would state your address, please.
Hey, my name is Dean Gessner, and I live here in Bloomington at 612 North McLean Street, number 6. Coming to you folks today to let you know that there's a problem in downtown Bloomington at the bus stop in front of the courthouse. There are a number of people who, for whatever reason, believe that that's the spot where they want to stay to sit around and drink and cause trouble and basically just be stupid or whatever. I don't know, but their actions and their behavior scare the crap out of a lot of people, okay? And it's becoming a real concern. It's becoming a real nuisance, and this is during the day. Now, the police are called, and about the only thing they can do is just have them pour out their drink or run them off or something like that. But then they always come back, and they got more drink, and they're back doing what they're doing again. Like I said, I think we've talked about this, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to offer in a couple of ideas, but they might not apply. I don't know, but this is becoming a real problem. We got, this is during the day. We got people using those buses for, we got kids women with kids. Some of the bus drivers are afraid. Some of the older folks are afraid. I'm not particularly afraid, but every time someone calls the police on them, those people, anybody who calls is usually treated to some abuse and or intimidation, and that's not going to fly. That can't fly at all. What needs to be done is you need to designate that block as either a like a no-fly zone, no-drink zone kind of a thing, you know, special penalties or something like that, or you need to modify your the ordinances so that, you know, this kind of situation can be covered and the police can be more effective. It's usually the same people every time, so they know they're doing wrong, and they're sitting out there in front of they're sitting at the bus stop, and they're sitting in front of the courthouse, and it's like thumbing their noses, going, "Hey, you look for us, we're violating the law and we're having a great time." That really something wrong there. Okay, so something needs to be done, and something needs. And I'm not sure what, but I'm going to let you folks figure out something to do with that, because it just can't go on anymore. It's just going to keep going on and on all summer long until something is done. That's all I got to say. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Next is Bruce Meeks. And I know you know the routine, Bruce.
Unfortunately. Bruce Meeks, 1402 Wright Street, Bloomington, Illinois. I already know tonight you have two items on your agenda, A and B, that are not the consent agenda, regular agenda, that a majority of you are going to vote yes for. You have some obligations legally that you can't really get out of. You can't really support the citizens like maybe you should. That's unfortunate. The special use permit as it exists for switching a zoning from B1 is outdated. It needs to be revoked. We need to go back to complete zoning where the citizens really can be engaged, get their opinions across weeks, months ahead of time before a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and inundation of emails to you. So I would ask you to rethink both the special use permits across the board in the zoning, which Mr. Hales has informed me is in progress. I also suggest you do not approve the external apartment as it stands at this time, even with the last-minute addition of a park to be somewhat appeasing. As for the other item you, as a majority, you will probably vote yes on, is the tax abatement for East Monroe Street. I referred you to the packet. Between the two, there are sufficient liquidity in assets to cover overruns during the development process. It also appears that both individuals own several rental properties and generate income and cash flow, a few of which are owned free and clear. On the application, hopefully I can get to it quick enough. Item 3, please describe whether the project can move forward or not without the existence of the incentive. The project will not without an incentive. There is not enough return on investment. We cannot afford to self-finance. Otherwise, it might work. With conventional financing, it won't work. The total abatement is $400,000. In my opinion, you're giving them $400,000 for a 5-year period that will assist them in their cash flow. What about our cash flow? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move on to proclamations, and we have a proclamation declaring June 15th, 2013 to be Juneteenth Celebration Day. Now, what is Juneteenth Celebration Day? Well, I'm about to tell you. Okay. This is, whereas the emancipation of African Americans from the bonds of slavery took place on different dates in our nation's history, and whereas some slaves in the southern states were freed by the Emancipation Proclamation issued by President Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, slaves living in states which were not in rebellion against the Union, were not freed until the 13th Amendment was declared ratified on December 18th, 1865. We probably saw that in the Lincoln movie. Whereas many slaves who were technically freed by the Emancipation Proclamation were not in fact freed until the areas in which they had lived were brought under the control of the Union troops, and whereas in June of 1865, General Gordon Granger landed in Galveston, Texas, and read a governmental order freeing all the slaves in East Texas, an action which was the basis for the Juneteenth celebration in Texas, which celebrate the date on which slaves in East Texas were liberated from slavery. And whereas the Juneteenth celebration is now commemorated in many states outside of Texas, including Illinois, therefore I, Terry Renner, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, do hereby proclaim Saturday, June 15th, 2013 to be Juneteenth Celebration Day. And thank you for your indulgence. But moving right along, we have the consent agenda under 7, items 7A through 7L. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oh, excuse me. Whoa, excuse me. You have an objection. I'm sorry. You want to pull something? Excuse me.
Is this on? Yeah, it's on. Oh, okay, all right.
Should be.
I'm expecting a red light, not a green light. I'm actually going to recuse myself on 7K because of my affiliation with Illinois Wesleyan.
Your microphone is
Not on.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 7K, or do we need to, oh, I'm sorry, you have another item to pull, I'm sorry.
I'd like to pull 7J, as I suggested that I might in the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 7K and 7J are being pulled. Any others? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Move to approve as amended.
Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second? Second. Second by Alderman Fazzini. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the consent agenda is approved. Now we move to item 7K, which is, excuse me, 7, which is the Illinois Wesleyan.
J.
and K have been pulled.
J and K, oh, I just listed them in reverse alphabetical order. That's my problem. Okay, so 7, why do I have them?
J, the sign inventory.
Yeah. And so 7J, Alderwoman Stearns, you have concerns on that?
Thank you. On 7J, it's $100,000 for the purchasing of, the sign inventory, street sign inventory to Cloud Point Geographics. And my question on this isn't whether that's the best bid or the best contractor to do it, but what we did before and whether there are other methods of actually meeting this requirement. And I believe, if I'm reading the responses to my questions correctly, there are other methods of meeting this requirement to inventory our signs. And my thought is this really the least, expensive method? Or if we looked at other methods, could we find a, cost differential? So not having an analysis of the other methods of doing this, it concerns me. The $100,000 expenditure is what I'm concerned about.
City Manager Hales, would you clarify?
Yes. First off, I just want to reiterate, as the staff backup report indicated, we have about 25,000. That's 25,000 traffic signs throughout the city of Bloomington. What we have currently, and what's pretty, traditional, is we have a manual system, a handwrite system to really inventory, keep track of these. Frankly, I think it's also important to point out that staff resources really haven't been sufficient probably to spend the kind of management time, overseeing these 25,000 signs as we needed to. And then the other key point is that the federal government is mandating, this is a federal mandate, the traffic signs, certain traffic signs include this retro reflectivity. on the signs, which is a new requirement, a little bit more costly, but it's designed to help the motoring public see these signs, especially regulatory signs. Across the nation, in order to achieve greater efficiency, effectiveness, and have better management control over when these signs need to be replaced, people have gone with automation, trying to take this database and put it in electronic format. Not only so you have a automated inventory, electronic database to go to, but also what we see this doing is giving us each year through monitoring, reporting, we will automatically know, especially during the life of these signs, how many signs are coming up next year, the following year, the third year, for removal. Also, if there's things that are broken, had to be repaired, right out in the field, with handheld devices, we can update that database. So do we have an exact cost of what it's costing us with this handheld, kind of legacy system? No, I haven't seen that staff's been able to compute that. However, with 25,000 signs and what has been the track record of many other cities across the nation, they have chosen and they have seen that the more cost-efficient and effective way to manage these signs is to go automation. So we do have Kevin Cothe here, who is standing in from Jim Karch, can maybe give a further elaboration on that if Alderman or the council has more questions or wants further elaboration.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of, yes. So if I'm understanding you correctly, prior to this, our staff was completing the work, our own city staff, Public Works. Is that correct?
Oh, correct, yes.
Okay. Well, I support using our Public Works staff whenever possible instead of going outside, but I do appreciate your explanation. I don't think I need any more. Thank you.
And just clear, yes, our staff will continue to operate this just with all our software systems and Munis and that. So it'll constantly be an internal process to manage this.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion then to approve this item? Moved by Alderman Fazzini, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Alderman Black. Okay. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Black.
Yay.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Milamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
No.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay. Now we move on to item 7K, petition submitted by Illinois Wesleyan requesting vacation of Beecher Street right-of-way between Franklin and East Street and the alley right-of-way accessed by Beecher Street on the south and Hornberger Drive on the east. I have a motion to approve, and then we can perhaps pursue with discussion. Okay.
I make a motion that we approve as presented.
Okay. Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by, seconded by Alderman Fazzini. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Milamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we move on to item 8A, petition submitted by H.L. Bloomington LLC and Hunman Management requesting a special use permit for multiple family dwellings for the property located at 1021, 1025, 1031, 1037, and 1041 Exton Drive. And there has been a last-minute concession by the developer. And City Manager Hales, will you please explain?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me first, just by way of just brief overview, as you've seen in the material, the applicant is proposing 5 two-story apartments. There on Exton, over on the city's east side. This is in a currently zoned B1 commercial. They went before the Zoning Board of Appeals on May 15th, and on a 5-to-1 vote, the special use permit was recommended to the council for your approval. Staff, in its review, did find that the applicant had met the criteria for a special use permit, recommended approval. However, as indicated earlier, there is concerns that have been expressed by residents and others in the area, and that's documented in both the petition and in the minutes of the ZBA and so forth. As a result of staff's review of this, as we were getting ready to prepare the staff backup report, in the ordinance we did include 2 additional conditions. And as you've seen, the one condition is that the applicant has to provide off-street parking or a staging area for construction vehicles. This resulted as a result of concerns raised on the apartment construction on the west of Exton, and we also added an additional item. We furthermore indicated in the staff backup report that the Staff Traffic Advisory Committee would be looking at a staff initiative to look at the pros and cons of putting up no parking signs on the east side of Exton, similar to what currently exists on the west side, and we'll proceed with that administratively. And furthermore, staff's also going to look at the current traffic signage at the intersection of Cornelius and Exton to see whether or not that's adequate or if there should be consideration to modify those traffic concerns. And both those came as a result of what we're hearing from the residents. Since that time, in putting together the staff backup report, the developer has submitted some additional information, including what they are calling a modification to their plan, one which would delete, I believe it's 4 apartment units, and they would install some playground material. At this time, I'd like to have our corporate counsel, Todd Greenberg, come up. You did receive in your packet or attached to the council questions and answers some additional information just on special use permits. And we do have a situation where the council has both the written record from the Zoning Board of Appeals and all that documentation, and now just since Friday we have further information from the developer on modifications they're proposing to the plan. And to help the council with advice and counsel how to consider that and the options you have tonight on this application, I'd like to have Mr. Greenberg come and
Just to
address
clarify
the council.
that, the options meaning that we could act on what we have, or we could send it back to the ZBA for public comment.
Correct.
And that's what Todd's going to talk. Come on forward, please.
Actually, that sums it up pretty well. You have the ability to, decide that the special use permit can be approved either as in the form that it was brought up to you, or with whatever additional restrictions the city council wishes to place on it. If the city council believes that the information received at the zoning board meeting is not sufficient for you to make a decision, Chapter 2, Section 26 of the city code provides that in most cases, the city council will not rehear matters that have already been referred to a board or commission for a public hearing. And there's 2 reasons for that. First is that to impress that, in fact, the proper time for people to state their objections, to give evidence, that type of thing, is at the public hearing, and also because it's difficult in the context of a Monday night city council meeting for the city council to make findings of fact, particularly when they might just be hearing from one person rather than other people who might be able to give additional information or even rebuttal information. So that's mainly it. There are 6 standards which usually are the zoning board is required to make findings of fact, and if the council's belief is that there isn't sufficient evidence for you to be secure with one of those 6 findings of fact, it's staff's recommendation to, if that's the real reason, then to send it back to the board for additional evidence. But we also put in the request that these are citizen committees, and don't simply send it back, in order to avoid making a decision, because it's also an imposition on the citizens who serve on those boards and commissions. But
I do have one question, just to clarification, and I think maybe Member Black might weigh in here. And the county, we were told essentially if we couldn't consider any additional facts that weren't done by, gathered by the ZBA. So there's the elected representatives, we were bound by whatever evidence was collected by the ZBA. Is that correct?
I haven't checked, obviously we've got more ability as a home rule municipality than the county does.
Okay.
The county is strictly covered by the county's code in the revised statutes, or I should say the compiled statutes. I'm showing how old I am. But, and that may be the reason. So you have slightly greater latitude than the county board does.
I see. Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Okay, actually, can...
Mayor, could I just,
sure.
I'd just like corporate counsel to clarify, if the council were to approve the special use permit tonight by ordinance, I just wanted to reiterate, they have the option of approving the original plan as submitted, or they could give that approval, as per the amended submittal by the developer.
Yes,
Could you just clarify
that's
that?
correct.
So essentially, we have three options tonight. We can approve what was approved by the ZBA without the addition. We can approve this with the addition, or we can send it back to ZBA for public comment on the amended version.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The property owner here has obviously indicated by the proposal which it submitted today that it's willing to abide by this revised plan.
Okay. Since we have three options, do I have a motion from and a second for one of the three options? Sure. Alderman Milwaukee?
I'd like to make a motion that we send it back to the ZBA for additional public comment.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Stearns. Comment, questions? Certainly, I think it's pretty safe to say that it would involve more public opportunity to comment on this specific plan, and I think that may be the intention of Alderman Milwaukee. Alderman Fazzini, please.
Yes, I'm curious. The change that the developer or builder is willing to make seems to be to the advantage of the people in the neighborhood, not to the advantage of the owner. Is that accurate?
I think that's reasonable to say, because I think earlier on it was proposed but not included, and then it was included later.
Okay, so
I think that's safe to say.
We're putting it off and back to the ZBA, even though it's a better proposal for the people who were against it in the first place. Is that am I accurate?
I think that's one way to
That's one way
interpret
to
it.
say it. Okay. All right.
I'll allow others to
They
weigh
can
in.
interpret how they will.
Alderman-
Thank you. I think I got it.
Alderman Fruin?
Just a very quick comment that the modification made looks to me like it's a very minor modification, not a substantial change of facts. I think the issues are very well vocalized. There are certain issues that we don't have any control on with regard to redistricting of schools, et cetera. You can dissect all these different issues. I think police and fire have indicated that this additional development would not cause a problem to the police and fire department. So, I mean, we can all go on, but the bottom line is the staff has recommended this. The ZBA has recommended this. As we often say up here, we're not opposed to more public comment, but if we return this to a board or commission as recommended here, we're on a very slippery slope because there is always more information the second time around. So that's why we have our boards and commissions and recommendations. So I'm a little bit concerned why we would send it back unless there's substantial information out there that we don't have yet.
And just to clarify, if this motion to send it back to ZBA does not pass, then we would be left with one of two other options. Okay? Correct. Alderman Stage.
So again, I want to be clear that what the ZBA heard is not what's being presented, the revised petition being presented by the developer tonight. Is that correct in my understanding?
It's correct that the ZBA did not see this revised plan where the developer has, just as of Friday, said that they would be willing to eliminate 4 apartment units and in its place put in some playground equipment. That topic of needing open space playground equipment in the project area, yes, was discussed, but at that time the developer did not offer this. It just came in between the ZBA action and tonight's council meeting.
So just to be sure I'm clear, there's not been public comment then on the revised petition by the developer, is that correct?
Yes.
And so I guess one of the principles here, and I agree with Alderman Fruin, what he says, we want to try and create an efficient process, but we also don't want to encourage and enable a process that allows changes after public comment happens at the board and commission level, and then brings it to us without having what I mean, one person's insignificant change is another person's substantial change, right? I mean, that's kind of in the eye of the beholder. And so for me, I guess the principle is, do we want to make sure that whatever we're voting on tonight has been vetted, if you will, or heard in its proposed form at the board or commission level before it comes to the city council? And what I'm hearing is it has not been. So I just wanted to be sure I was clear on that. So thank you.
Alderman Boca?
Yes, I very much agree. Over the past couple of weeks, I spent a lot of time out there visiting the area, checking things out. And this is a very new development, and I heard a lot from the neighbors who were very concerned about the situation out there. And I would feel very uncomfortable not having had a chance to weigh in on this. I do feel that it's very important to have as much information as possible and to even know if this makes a difference. We've heard things from some people such as, well, what about the size of the area? Is the playground adequate enough or not? There's quite a few people out there. So I think those are things that I very much would like for not only the ZBA to weigh in on, but also for the neighbors in the area to be able to have a chance to speak up. Because frankly, I think we, some of those, the issue of time was raised as well, the time that the ZBA holds meetings. It's true that people, if they can't make it, they can't make it, but is it, adequate? Is it good enough? So personally, I prefer to err on the side of caution and say we've heard from as many people as possible. And I think ultimately it might end up in the benefit of all, because at that point, all things will come to a rest. So.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to recognize Alderman Schmidt, but just to note, we have about this point exceeded or hit the time limit after Alderman Schmidt seeks to be called. Speaks. If we want to continue the conversation, then I would want to have a motion for us to continue the conversation beyond our allotted time. And this is somewhat more complicated than perhaps we thought. Alderman Schmidt?
I will just only add to that I wouldn't make an assumption that all that would be talked about is what was put on the table. I think the residents out there made some very interesting suggestions. They also asked questions that I think probably we could find some answers to. There was legitimate concerns about school redistricting and what might be the dynamics of that, and someone from Unit 5 could possibly help everyone understand that better. And they're the folks who are invested already in that area.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. At this point, if you vote yes, this is a motion to send it back to the ZBA. If this motion does not pass, then we need to go back to one of the two options to either pass this in its original form or pass it with the amendments. We're okay. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
No.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes. Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Lamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We have will be referred back to ZBA. Thank you. Moving on to item 8B, and that's the Economic Development Incentive for 115 East Monroe. Do I have a motion to approve this before discussion?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman McDade. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Stearns. Okay. And now we'll have discussion. We have allocated 15 minutes. Let me start by asking how many of the council members would like to speak so I can figure out how we can allocate time? Could I have a show of hands? Okay. 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 All right. Well, Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you. I was just saying that I might want to speak depending on what else is said. To me, I'll just be extremely brief. This to me is a good project. It's very positive for the downtown. Regarding the tax abatement, Mr. Meeks made the point about, a substantial amount of money. However, we're looking at an abatement here of property taxes, if I understand this correct, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, taxes that we would not be getting if not for. So I think this project meets the standard of what if, and I think that if not, we would still have the same, if you will, slightly decaying historic building that would further decay and becomes more of a detriment than an asset. To me, this kind of development is the kind that will produce an asset, a tax-paying asset. And when it's done, then we'll have a very significant and nice, appreciation in the money that the taxing bodies will receive. To me, this is a good project, and I support it. Thank you.
If we just to clarify, City Manager Hales, that is the case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Willamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay, we move on to item 8C, and this is an analysis of a bid for 2013 contract for sidewalk reconstruction. Items of this nature might sometimes be placed on the consent agenda. It's with the dollar amount, I think it's fair to say, is why we thought we would bring it directly to the council. And that's also one of the reasons why we decided on probably 10 minutes was sufficient. And if that's not the case, then of course we can extend that time. But do I have a motion to approve before we begin the debate?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, a motion made by Alderman Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman McDade. And discussion, questions? Seeing none, I think we'll go ahead and call the roll. Thank you.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Willamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Great. Let's move on to 8D, professional engineering contract with Clark Dietz for Locust Street and this water main replacement, Phase 2. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Approved by Alderman Schmidt. Is there a second? Second by now I've got them coming quickly here. Alderwoman Stearns. Discussion, let me ask, how many people would like to speak on this? See if we have, okay. Alderwoman Stearns, you want to speak? Oh, okay. No questions? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Willamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay. David, would you like to give the city manager report and discussion, please?
You're going so quickly here. I was hoping to have a few more minutes, but
Well, I got to make up for the last
no,
meeting.
you're doing great. I would like to just acknowledge and thank Barb Atkins and staff. Tonight's responses, council questions was very lengthy. A lot of time was spent by staff in preparing those, so thank you very much. Also, I just want to, on the incentive application by Green Building LLC, I think what you have tonight is really a product of not only some much more rigorous analysis and evaluation of an application for incentive, which is a significant improvement on years past. And I don't have to tell you some of the discussions we've had. I do believe that this process is one that includes a lot of collaboration with District 87, McLean County, and others, and there's a lot more documentation on proving that there is a need and that the applicant has made their case that if it was not but for this incentive, the project couldn't proceed. Furthermore, I think it's a testament to the council and your approval of the enterprise zone for downtown. That is a form of the incentive that this particular applicant and builder can utilize as part of the benefits or the incentives they're seeing. It has been a long road for the applicant, and I do want to point out that going forward, we will be able to even cut further the timeline from the point of an fully complete application being received to the time we're back in front of you. So we appreciate their patience in working with this on the extra time. And second, I think that sidewalk reconstruction bid, again, I think for the public's consumption, this is about a doubling, a 100% increase in the amount of funding for sidewalk repair throughout this community. My compliments to our engineering staff and their evaluation of the condition of sidewalks throughout the city. But again, this is a big increase in funding over last year. I remember about 4 years ago, we may have only had about $100,000. So I think it shows your commitment to infrastructure in the city, and certainly with the engineering design underway for Phase 2, as you've approved, we'll be able to even begin to go further in looking at how we can further improve sanitary sewer, stormwater for future phases of that Locust Colton project. I would like to point out, going back to the Exton Road, that one of the projects that the city staff and the city is going to be embarking on, and that is that Bloomington Comprehensive Update. I'm giving direction to kind of move ahead with that project. What I'd like you to begin thinking about is, as just with the Exton, I think many of our residents or home buyers, as they look at an area, they look at a commercial zone which could be abutting a residential area. And unless they get into more detail, they may not be aware that multifamily dwelling could occur in that commercial zone, whether it be B1, C1, C2, and so forth. I do think it would be appropriate at some point in time to ask our Planning Commission, staff, and others to look at whether or not changes should be made going forward, so that when someone looks at a commercial zone next to a residential property, they could have that assurance that only commercial development could take place in that. As staff has talked about that, we do feel that that should be a topic of research, discussion, debate by the Planning Commission, and the comprehensive update is a great means to do so. Furthermore, I think as issues brought out in that Exton Drive, we do feel that there's also the topic of looking at how large multifamily development projects, if they're not providing open space, recreational improvements, especially when you get a many bedroom type apartment complex, maybe the city's ordinances are not addressing that particular quality of life need for that area. And as many of you know, with neighborhood parks, community parks, those can be a long ways from some of these projects. Certainly the large apartment complexes around the city usually are including a lot of those amenities, open space. But I think what we're finding here on Exton is sometimes the lower density type of developments, there's no requirement for that. So I just bring that out because the comprehensive plan update will be starting up here very shortly. And I think now and in future meetings, either as council, planning commission, or together, you may want to say, you know what, here's some topics we want to make sure that not only these committees, but the public at large looks at very seriously, and where can we learn from the past, and where we've heard citizens express concerns, how can we better learn from that and make appropriate changes in our comp plan going forward. So with that, thank you very much and appreciate all staff's help in bringing you this agenda packet tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm only going to have a few brief remarks to quote Patty Lynn Silva in a previous presentation. She said, just like Henry VIII said to all of his wives, I promise not to keep you. So I'll be fairly brief here. I just want to, Patty Lynn, that was too much fun not to repeat again. I just want to announce tomorrow night we're going to have the postponed, but first of our neighborhood-based town hall meetings in Ward 7, and Alderman Scott Black and I will be at the Crosswinds Community Church. That's also co-sponsored by the Northwest Neighborhood Association. It starts tomorrow at 7 p.m., so be there or be square. All right. We are also, I'm also in conversation, I believe, the next two aldermen in pipeline are Alderwoman Stearns and Alderwoman McDade, and we haven't exactly set dates, but I think ours, Judy, yours is, and mine is going to be in the summer at some point, and I think we said late August or September. Is that right? So those are coming, just FYI. The third mayoral open house we had on Friday had a little over 20 people attend. We basically sat around the fishbowl like we had 2 weeks earlier because there was a smaller group than the first night, and had, I think, a pretty wide-ranging discussion. Thank you, Alton, for the compliment. And I think we had real serious discussion with a lot of issues. It doesn't mean that everybody agreed necessarily on everything, but I think it was open, I think it was respectful, and I hope to continue that dialogue twice a month. We have been meeting with lots of people, including Mike O'Grady, who's in the audience, and Ken Springer on economic development generally and downtown in particular, and many of the downtown business owners and the downtown association itself. We are going to move on a downtown plan that hopefully at some point in, not the next council meeting, but some point in the summer, we will have to present to the council for approval. We're continuing to talk with, of course, staff and David Hales and members of the Public Finance Committee on pensions and, of course, funding infrastructure. One thing that I do have to bring to everyone's attention is certainly something that was on my radar screen, but now it's a real big blip, and that is Alderwoman Stearns and I took a ride a couple hours with the cops on Friday to look at nuisance properties, and frankly, it was rather shocking. So it is definitely something that we've had nuisance properties apparently that have been out there for years, and I think it's something we are going to need to address. It's very important and serious. So those are my reports, and I will now ask which aldermen and women would like to speak. Alderman Sage.
Two quick things, Mayor. This Thursday, June 13th at 5 o'clock, we will have the Public Safety Aldermanic Subcommittee meeting where we will be talking about the vicious dog ordinance. Again, I've asked members of that committee, Alderman Stearns and Alderman Schmidt, to make sure that they've gathered questions that we can be as efficient and as effective as possible during that meeting. Again, what we want to do is work through those issues. And I'm assuming, as I've said to Judy and Karen, that list should be minimal because the conversations, I'm assuming, have been ongoing between the animal rights groups and city staff and so forth. And then I think we're still then driving towards having that ordinance on the agenda for the second council meeting this month. I think that's the intent. That's the hope. And then finally, in the past, I've tried to do this, particularly with David and Barb and the directors. I did want to make note that I think since our last meeting, or right around our last meeting, I think Barb Atkins has celebrated her 31st anniversary with the city of Bloomington. And I think it's real important to say to Barb, I can't see her. She's hidden behind the massive podium here at this point.
She started when she was 4.
But to recognize that and acknowledge that, and as like so many of our city employees, we're better because of Barb's work and her commitment to the city. So thank you.
Oh, and I'm remiss. Today's your birthday, right? Yes, it is. Happy birthday. Actually, we're only a few days apart, maybe not in terms of years, but mine's Sunday. Happens to coincide with Father's Day. Sort of a bummer. You don't get 2 gifts. I'm not going to go there. Alderwoman Stearns.
Just on the vicious dog ordinance, there's been discussion between the attorney from Wishbone and our city attorney, who George Boyle, I believe, is handling it, and they have an appointment on Friday due to their scheduling, conflicts or whatever. So they're going to be getting together, sitting down, and I think working this out, doing a final kind of work through with, at least with Wishbone's issues, not that that's all the issues, but at least that will happen on Friday. So I think that's a step forward. And really quickly, no one has really said anything. Parks and Rec, I think, did a fabulous job with the Taft Monument in Withers Park. And June 1st was a wonderful day. John Kennedy, Bobby Mays came out. And what we celebrated, Alderman Schmidt and I and Mel Theobald, who is a professional and almost a world-renowned photographer from Chicago, from Bloomington originally, came down and helped us celebrate with several people from the city. Unfortunately, Mayor Renner, you were out of town. But it is wonderful to preserve and protect this treasure, this Taft treasure that we have in the city, and unfortunately it hasn't always been appreciated, I don't think. But John, again, your staff, and just the fact that we're protecting something that we have is great. And in addition to that, on monuments and such, David, I'm curious because we've talked several times about the Vietnam Korea Memorial in Franklin Park, and I had asked, maybe a year ago now, that we look at the fact that it's damaged, that its flame is missing, that some of the names are actually almost, that you can certainly read them, but it concerns me that the erosion around them is maybe not, going to last forever, that you'll even be able to read the names. So I know you, David, you've taken some steps on, and John Kennedy as well, and I wondered, where are we on that? We had a couple of meetings about it, and Mayor Renner, you're not aware of this, but now you are. So where are we on that?
I could either have John Kennedy come up and respond to that, or we could get out an email to all the council, whatever your preference would be.
Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Thank you.
And then
Thank you.
We'll share with
Thank
all
you.
the council, because
next-
I'm not exactly sure what the last step was, so we'll put together and shoot you out an email.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Schmidt.
I just was noticing the crawl line up there that says that the ZBA meeting for the 20th is canceled. Is it now canceled? I don't know. It'll come around again, but I mean, we've talked about sending this back to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the meeting's been canceled. And I mean, when will this go back to the ZBA, the Extum?
That'll be a decision based on when we put out the notice, how much time we have to allow for a notice to be sent out. So we'll go through the same, requirements as the original.
I see. Okay.
And that's why, but we will notify you of when it will be in order to comply with ordinance for their second hearing.
I
on the
see.
matter.
And I also just want to reiterate, we have talked for years and years and years about the 3 o'clock meetings. And the last time we checked, the ZBA wanted to meet then. I'm not sure that meets our citizens' needs. But if we keep it at 3 o'clock, we need to revamp the way that we gather feedback and make it easier for people.
We've got a new CDA, we can probably do that, right? Ask them if it's a better time.
Yeah, and Mayor, you mentioned that we need to address nuisance properties. And could you just talk real briefly on what do you mean?
Well, nuisance properties was my notice that it's basically properties that are physically in really bad shape and have really dangerous stuff, harmful equipment, things on them, and going out to Gill Street, all the way even to a property on Washington Street. Most of them weren't even on the west side. There were, but meaning that's the stereotype, right? But that's a stereotype. But anyway, most of the properties were on the east side. I should put it that way. Sorry. Anyway, the pictures, really, if you just saw the pictures, it wouldn't do it justice when you physically go out there and then you realize these have been years and years, the documentation, years where people have gotten away with things that are quite hazardous. We're in a sense lucky that kids or whatever, haven't played on this and gotten hurt or other problems. I would recommend that you take the same ride I took, and I'm sure the police would be happy to show you these. And again, it was jaw-dropping to me.
Thank you.
Alderman Fassini.
I have 3 items, and I'll try and keep them under 3 minutes. The first one is this Thursday, the McLean County Museum of History is having its second annual gala, And this year, it's honoring Woody Shadid, Ruth Waddell, Roger and Stevie Joslin, and our own past mayor, Judy Markowitz. And in addition to the little play about each one, there's going to be a person who knows each of these people well, telling the real skinny. And Judy Markowitz is going to be spoken about by Alderman Karen Smith. So if you can, please make it. There were over 500 people who came to the first annual gala, and as of 2 days ago, there are going to be over 500 coming to this one, and it's at ISU. So no pressure at all, Karen. Second, I watched the last meeting on my little computer, and I missed at least 10 to 15% of what was going on because I couldn't hear it, and the picture wasn't showing who was speaking. So we need a little fix-up in talking into our microphones, I think, just for their nuisance properties. There are other communities who have these, and those communities, some of them charge a fee. After a certain amount of time, if you don't fix what's wrong, if your property is vacant, you start paying a fee. If your property has a nuisance, you start paying a fee. I think maybe the pocketbook is the way to get these fixed. Yeah, I know we have some fees, bigger fees. And vacant properties that aren't nuisance properties, fees. Yeah.
Thank you. Alderman Fruin.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. We have talked about meeting times for different boards and commissions many, many, many times. I'm fine with opening that back up. We have to make sure that it's not only how we feel, but how our board and commission members feel about coming in during the evening. If we are going to look at the 3 o'clock ZBA meeting, I'd suggest we also look at all the 4 o'clock starts we have, the 5 o'clock starts. So there are the meetings that meet late afternoon that might have to be evaluated. So it's more than ZBA. Just a couple comments and follow up to David's comments on Extum. Not a situation that has evolved to anybody's liking the way it's happened over the years. And it's good. It's getting good discussion. As Maboka represents that group now, I have represented that group in the past, probably in prior Ward 3 as well. I can't remember how all the ward maps have been drawn over the years, but it is a real challenge out there. There's no doubt about that. And we'll have some lessons learned. But one of the real keys out there is we don't have an east-west roadway between College and Empire. And that's what complicates this whole thing. So Norma Drive and Extum is getting a lot of traffic. I hope everybody's been out there, but Cornelius is stubbed on both ends. We've already got it stubbed on both ends, so we have that center gap that's not built. And so I think this has been discussed in many circles in many projects in the past, but when we talk about lack of parkland, lack of space, lack of green space, McGraw Park is less than a quarter of a mile away. So we ought to consider, as we've discussed in some circles, maybe a temporary pathway or some passageway that all these people on Extum can get over to McGraw a little easier than they can now. So I think there might be some temporary solutions until we get Cornelius built, which is really going to be a huge key to relieving that traffic congestion and taking Cornelius west to Trinity and Trinity south to Empire. So it's a tough issue. We got airport property, we got buffer, we got, it's a tough issue. The only other thing I'll mention, I assume the voice vote tonight on the consent agenda is a legal binding vote. I think we've talked about that.
Actually, I apologize. It is.
Okay.
That wasn't my intention. That was my standard practice for doing consent agendas as chair of the Justice Committee. But yeah, I think our rules require that, but it shouldn't affect that. I mean, legally, we don't have to have a roll call on it. Okay, so do you want us to have a roll call again?
My only comment is, and it's a personal comment obviously, and everybody knows what's coming, is I've read my statement about personal and financial gain and receiving monies with those we do business. And I've read that forever and ever, and I have made suggestions to the council and to prior mayor that that be incorporated into our agenda, so I don't have to read the statement every council meeting. But I think with the recent elections and the increased campaign contributions, I think the public is becoming more and more concerned about public officials receiving campaign monies, especially when we're acting on motions and issues that impact the citizens. So I don't know where that's going to go. Maybe this thing will just kind of fall off the table. But at some point in time, when we do business with someone we've received monies from, I think it might surface, and I hate to have it become an issue then.
I guess I'm not understanding what does the monies from have to do with roll call?
I
On the
think we
consent
need
agenda.
some statement, in my opinion, with every meeting as to whether any of us have any receipt of monies from people we're doing business with on that agenda night. I think it's a good disclosure. It's open transparency. So it doesn't, we can do the roll call by voice vote, but I'd like to see that statement on there as to whether we have received monies from anyone we're doing business with on the agenda.
Okay. I need to process that a little bit, but not that I disagree, but I would assume mostly that would not be the case. But I tell you what, just so that there's no question, why don't we go ahead and call the roll, if that, because it's not required by law, but it is in our ordinance, right? Because the correct, Todd? I mean, that's what the discussion we had.
I hate to split hairs, but our ordinances are the law until we amend the law.
Right. Okay. One of the initial questions I had was, what's the difference between what does the state require? What are municipal laws, common? It's not necessarily we've decided on. So we'll go ahead and call the roll, so there's no question about whether we're all here.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
And typically, I would say this, Mayor, as you've seen the last couple meetings for both the consent and regular agenda, I did not have any personal or business interest in any of the listed items, nor have I received any financial benefits from any of the parties or organizations referenced in these agenda items. I vote yes on the consent and regular agenda.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Alderman Miller-Lamwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments by Alderman? Did you have something else, Jim?
I would always value the opinion of the colleagues that I've shared my suggestion with before, or the newly elected mayor or newly elected council members, as to my recommendation to include that statement in our agenda. And in essence, not to drag this out, but it simply indicates that if any of us have received monies from anybody that we're acting on the agenda, that we just make that known, and that's perfectly legal, it's perfectly acceptable, sure. It's allowed by campaign law, but I think it's open transparency, and if we're talking about open transparency and public interest, then we ought to play by our word.
Sure. Again, we can talk about that, and I certainly see no reason why not to. And I would assume that under anyone's basic, good conscience, if you've received money from someone, you would recuse yourself if it's direct, if you have a direct financial benefit. Right.
Mayor, maybe just a quick response, Jim. And that is, you can, members of the public, members of the media can go to the Illinois State Board of Elections, and they can see if any of the aldermen sitting up here have taken contributions from any groups that the city does business with, and then draw their own conclusions from that.
Alderman Lauer.
I'm not going to address that at this time, but I've just got a few short comments. I'm trying to hold till the end here. On projects like the Green Building, I've gotten a lot of response back from my constituents. I guess the biggest thing that we really would like to take a closer look at is when we involve public money, either on the positive side through a TIF or on the negative side through an abatement like this, that we have some metrics for performance from that developer, and set some concrete goals and a timeline for performance. In other words, for completion. We've had a number of these types of small developments in the past that have failed to reach completion.
and some have not reached even 30% completion from the original proposal. And so I really don't like government intrusion in business, but when we deal with public money, I think we need to have a little bit more say and answer for the citizen. In terms of our Locust Colton project going forward, I think we really need to take a very close look at a better or more aggressive stance in terms of financing for the future. I really would like to try to stay away from dependence on the state and federal governments because I really disrespect what they have done in terms of track record up to this point. We're in quite a hole here in the state of Illinois. I don't want to be tagging my wagon along with theirs. I want to strike our own chord here and be a leader. Okay. In terms of Exton Road, I think that there's a lot more that we could do in conjunction with the developer in terms of keeping the construction vehicles off the streets. Okay, I think that there is probably some areas that we could use that wouldn't impede upon airport property, but yet be along the perimeter possibly to try to limit the exposure from the general public. And so that it would be a little bit more palatable. Same thing with our buffer zones, our berm, and our landscaping can, in terms of the permanent plan, can make it a lot more palatable and a lot easier living for the folks that have to be living in an area where there's a lot of congestion. And maybe something in conjunction with that in terms of our parking. And a trail in McGraw Park, boy, that'd be a huge thing. I think that Jim hit on a big thing. Maybe we really need to look at completing that road or something in the interim, maybe not a permanent street, but possibly even a soft street, such as a gravel easement, et cetera. I guess that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alderman Fazzini, second by Alderman Black. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed can stay.